Alright, welcome back and thanks for tuning in to another episode of barSILENCE. My name is Jamison, and I'm your host. barSILENCE is a SuperPod network production that's dedicated to exploring the very best video game music each and every month. If you haven't yet, head over to barsilence.com to find an easy link to subscribe on whatever your favorite podcatcher is. You can also go to superpodnetwork.com to check out an excellent variety of gaming articles, as well as some of the best podcasts that are focused on retro gaming nostalgia and other gaming goodness. And of course, if you're looking for the best 24/7 around-the-clock video game music radio station, you should check out 8 Beats Radio. This show plays there live on the first Tuesday of every month, and you can tune in by going to 8beats.co. In this episode, we're going to be listening to the awesome genre-hopping soundtracks from Squaresoft's Tobal No. 1 and Tobal 2. In the 1990s, Squaresoft was at the top of their game as a premier Super Nintendo developer. They were delivering must-play RPGs like Final Fantasy, Secret of Mana, and the legendary Chrono Trigger, which involved the dream team of creators that included their competitor and future acquisition Enix, as well as famed Dragon Ball artist Akira Toriyama. Squaresoft was making every shot they took. And then, shortly after that, they went even bigger and collaborated with Nintendo to make Super Mario RPG, which would go on to be their last Super Nintendo game in the West. Then, Squaresoft did the unthinkable as they moved on to the next generation of consoles. They left behind their unofficial partnership with Nintendo to instead develop for Sony's brand new 32-bit PlayStation. This move put the eyes of gamers around the world on Squaresoft and Sony, especially as the highly anticipated Final Fantasy VII was about to bring RPGs into the future. Yet, despite being best known for RPGs, the first game that Squaresoft created for the PlayStation wasn't an RPG. It was a 3D fighting game. To make this kind of unexpected surprise a reality, Squaresoft worked with a small studio called Dream Factory that had only 17 people on the team. But, crucially, all of them had experience in 3D fighting games. Squaresoft knew that for Tobal to stand out in an already crowded fighting game genre, it was going to have to do things a little bit differently than the competition to make this one special. One of the game's most unique features was the freedom of movement within the 3D arena. Players could sidestep and circle their opponents while a free-floating camera kept the focus on the action. This was a major shift from other 3D fighters at the time, which largely stuck to 2D fighting in 3D spaces. Next, in a somewhat controversial move, Dream Factory opted for untextured map polygons, unlike Tekken and Virtua Fighter. So while it did look old at the time, it came with big benefits. First, it allowed the game to run at a smooth 60 frames per second, which of course is critical for a fighting game. And it also drastically reduced the loading times, which was seen as a major advantage in this era of CD-based gaming. Then, the biggest addition for many people was that Squaresoft brought back Akira Toriyama to design a vibrant cast of characters expertly recreated in those untextured map 3D polygons, giving the game an almost animated look while staying true to his signature style. This combination of unique attributes that built this game definitely helped to contribute to largely positive reviews when Tobal No. 1 was released in 1996. In addition to the battle mode's one-on-one fighting, critics praised the innovative single-player quest mode. This RPG-like dungeon explorer featured 30 levels of enemies, various health effects, and rewarded players by unlocking characters, offering a ton of replayability. However, despite all of this, the game didn't sell very well at all. There were only around 100,000 copies that were sold in the US and just over 750,000 in Japan. In the years since, it's been highly suggested that the bulk of those sales were largely attributed to the pack-in demo of the outrageously anticipated Final Fantasy VII. But as a fan of Dragon Ball, Chrono Trigger, and just about anything else by Squaresoft that I could get my hands on, Tobal No. 1 was the perfect game for a kid like me. I put a ton of time into this game with my friends, and all of those fond memories always come back as soon as I listen to this game's incredibly awesome soundtrack. In fact, I'd say this game's soundtrack is probably the final unique component to Tobal No. 1 that makes it so special. While the game was being made, Dream Factory didn't have their own in-house composer. So, Squaresoft lent them a collection of their brightest composers like Yasuhiro Kawakami, Ryuji Sasai, Yasunori Mitsuda, Junya Nakano, Masashi Hamauzu, Kenji Ito, Noriko Matsueda, and Yoko Shimomura. Their collective efforts, under the direction of Yasunori Mitsuda, are served as a diverse soundtrack that's filled with intermixed genres like hip-hop, electronica, and jazz. And they're all peppered with a distinctly world music type of flavor. Now, I think the song that we heard at the beginning of this episode, called Tobal No. 1 by Yasunori Mitsuda, is an excellent introduction to what we're going to hear in this soundtrack. So to get this block of music started, we're going to begin with 2 songs by Masashi Hamauzu, who's also composed for Chocobo's Mysterious Dungeon, Saga Frontier 2, and later on many PS2 and PS3 Final Fantasy games. The first of his tracks is called Shinto Shrine, and we'll back it up with the grooving beats of a song called Poltano. Next, we'll hear a track by Kenji Ito, known for composing the Super Nintendo Saga games, as well as other titles in the Mana series. His fiery and fast-paced track called Cloud City is packed with upbeat sounds and ambitious world music-style drums. We'll follow that with Urban Sight, which is a bustling tune by Yasuhiro Kawakami, who composed for the arcade version of Shinobi, Super R-Type on the SNES, and Final Fantasy Mystic Quest. After that, we'll hear Cosmic Desert by Junya Nakano, whose credits include Front Mission Gun Hazard, Threads of Fate, and Final Fantasy X. We're going to follow that track with an absolute jam and probably one of my favorites on the soundtrack. We're going to hear the lighthearted, tropical, and almost Ridge Racer-like sounds of Aqua and Trees by the legendary Yoko Shimomura. After that, we'll listen to Toridon, which is another jamming track by Yasuhiro Kawakami, and then we'll finally end this set with the deep grooves and hip-hop style beats of a song called Your Name Is by Yasunori Mitsuda. This song is seriously amazing. It's the kind of jam that you can absolutely live in, with its bebop and drums, moody guitars, and generally super cool vibe. Alright, what do you say we put down that demo of Final Fantasy VII and get ready to jam to the beats of Tobal No. 1? Enjoy these diverse and enthusiastically awesome tracks, and I'll be back after that to talk about the sequel, Tobal No. 2. After Tobal No. 1 was released worldwide, Squaresoft and Dream Factory were quick to follow up with the sequel. In 1997, Squaresoft released the Japanese-only Tobal 2. This time around, Dream Factory kept this follow-up pretty close to the original in terms of fighting styles and grappling moves. They did introduce a new projectile fireball attack, but performing one would take a hit from your own health bar, leaving it best for desperation moves. Story-wise, Tobal 2 doesn't really stray too far from the original either. Once again, Emperor Undan of planet Tobal is hosting the annual tournament where the winner gains control over mining a rare ore and energy source on the planet for the next year. Now, the big addition to Tobal 2 was the expanded quest mode. This time, it would include 6 different themed dungeons to explore and fight your way through. It also provided a town to explore where your characters could eat, sleep, and shop between runs on dungeons as you attempt to gain experience and bring up levels of different stats, RPG style. The quest mode also included the ability to capture monsters that could then be used as characters to fight in the versus mode. That means if you were to collect them all, there would be a roster of 200 characters that you could choose from. This fact earned Tobal 2 a Guinness World Record for the highest amount of selectable characters in a fighting game, which was a record that would last for 10 years until 2007 when Fire Pro Wrestling Returns offered an astounding 327. Originally, Tobal 2 was intended to have a North American release, and the launch date was even set for March 7, 1998. At the time, Squaresoft was in the middle of an incredible era of creativity on the PlayStation, where it genuinely seemed like nothing could stop them. They were releasing games like Final Fantasy VII, Bushido Blade, Final Fantasy Tactics, and Saga Frontier, nearly one after the other. So, when asked why Tobal 2 never made it outside of Japan, Squaresoft originally stated that the disappointing sales in North America for the first game was the reason they didn't localize it. But later in 2006, they would go on to claim that the limited memory and in-game text boxes couldn't contain the English translations without having to be redesigned. The good news is that you can fairly easily find and play fan translations of the game online if you're interested in giving this one a go. But in 1998 though, playing Tobal 2 in the West meant you needed to modify your PlayStation and import the game, neither of which were really options for me. But what did make it to my half of the world eventually was the game's incredible soundtrack, composed by the talented Takayuki Nakamura. He got his start at Sega and has credits on games like Michael Jackson's Moonwalker, Outrunners, as well as Virtua Fighter, Virtua Fighter 2, and finally Virtua Fighter 3. While at Dream Factory, he composed for Squaresoft's other fighting game called Air Guys, and later went freelance composing for Kabuki Warriors, Custom Robo, and plenty more. For Tobal 2, Nakamura sidestepped the world music vibes of the original and instead created a fantastic blend of genres including jazz, funk, and rock that's all held together by this vibrant dose of electronica. So, to get into these excellently jamming and grooving tunes, we're going to start off with one of my favorite examples of Nakamura's fusion of genres with a track called Checkered Career Album Original Mix. This main theme for the game perfectly sets up the stage for everything that you're going to experience in this soundtrack, thanks to its traveling bass lines, punchy synths, snappy drum work, and wailing guitars. After that, we're going to continue the same type of complex but addictively cool sounds with the song called The Original No. 5, and we'll follow it with the quickly moving beats and Spanish guitars of the song called Amethyst. Then, we'll listen to a fantastic set of grooving tracks that are called The Grody Boy, followed by Knock My Door, and then In an Unguarded Moment. Following those tunes, we're going to pick up the pace with the dancier sounds of a track called A Miracle Is Coming, and then hear the house-inspired pianos of The Speeder. Next, we'll switch over to 3 seriously great T-Square-like rock-influenced tracks called Beating Hard, A Crying Sun, and Hero's Looking Glass. After those rocking tunes, we're going to bring it back down a bit with the catchy beats and synths of a song called Dropout, followed by the smooth grooves of a tune called On Your Dark Side. Then, finally, we're going to listen to Tobal 2's second ending that keeps that slower, chilled-out vibe alive as we wrap up this block. Alright, let's grab our imported copies of the game and our freshly modded PlayStations, because it's time for a little Tobal 2. Enjoy these jamming and grooving tunes, and I'll be back after that. Alright, that's the show. I hope you enjoyed the awesome tunes of Squaresoft's 3D fighting games Tobal No. 1 and Tobal 2. If you want to interact with the show and tell me what you think about my selections in this episode, you can follow me on a variety of social media platforms. That includes Blue Sky, Threads, and Instagram. Following the show in those locations are exactly where you can find great screenshots, artwork, music clips, and various information about the games that are featured in each episode. Check the show notes to follow along on your favorite platform of choice. If you're enjoying this show's selection of incredibly great video game music each month, please consider taking a moment to leave a rating and review on Apple Podcasts, Pocket Cast, Overcast, YouTube, or wherever you're listening to this show, because I'd really love to hear what you think. Don't forget, you can go to barSILENCE.com to listen to past shows if you've missed any, and of course, if you're feeling giving, you can always support barSILENCE on Patreon. For already subscribing, I want to thank the members of the Legion of VGM for supporting the show. Zoe, Alusa, Cameron, and Reptile, you heroes are the absolute best, and I really hope you've enjoyed this episode. Now, if you want to join these legends and become a member of the Legion of VGM, you can subscribe for as little or as much as you want. Be sure to check those show notes for a link to learn more. I would also like to thank friends of the show and Legion members, Aaron of the excellent video game variety podcast, Super Pod Saga, as well as Professor Tom of the Shujin Academy VGM Club. You can and should check out both of these shows wherever you find your podcasts, as well as on TerraPlayer.com. Alright, to wrap up this show, I've got one more track to play us out. We're going to listen to Tower Block from Tobal 1, composed by Noriko Mitsuda, who also has credits on Front Mission, The Bouncer, and Final Fantasy XII. This unreleased track is a creative and jazzy experimental tune that's a serious treat to listen to. For whatever reason, this track didn't make it into the game, but I'm really glad that it was on the album because this song's actually pretty cool. Anyway, that's all for now. Enjoy this final song, and as always, thanks again for listening, and I'll see you guys next time.